Hello. I've been asked to outline the main issues in Chapter 5, Benchmarking in an Emission Trading Scheme, or ETS. My name is Bill Thompson, and I work for BP's Group Policy Team as the Director of European Climate and Energy Policy. I've worked for BP on emission trading issues since 2001. BP itself has a long pedigree in emission trading. Even before the European Emission Trading Scheme commenced in 2005, BP was active in the UK's own emission trading scheme and also ran its own internal scheme. Today, BP trading teams around the world not only support carbon risk management activities for BP's own installations, but also for external clients. But back to benchmarking. So, simply put, what is benchmarking? Benchmarking is the setting of a group standard to enable individual entity comparisons to be made with it. In an emission trading scheme, or ETS, the group is usually an industry sector, and the setting of a sector standard, or benchmark, is based on units of CO2 per unit of production. Now, the aim is to enable a comparison to be made between individual installations and their peers in the sector. And this can be used to determine a more efficient distribution of free allocation. Now, benchmarking itself is often part of an evolutionary path followed by an ETS. Most schemes commence with grandfathered allocation, free allocation based on historic emissions. And this is helpful because it enables an ETS to get up and running. Historic emissions are much easier to determine as they've already been made and recorded. Grandfathering also enables no initial risk of carbon leakage. And carbon leakage is very important to exposed sectors of industry. Why is this? It's because of the unintended consequences. If a carbon price or regulation is imposed on an economy, the affected sector production inside the economy is more costly, and imported competitor products are more economically attractive. Sector capital investment is similarly attracted outside the economy. But one good form of protection against carbon leakage is to issue free allocation to sectors at risk of carbon leakage. And this exposes or reduces the exposure of the carbon price and thus carbon leakage at the installation and sector level. But in those sectors at risk of carbon leakage, should all installations receive free allocation based on historical emissions, even if their carbon efficiency, their production performance, is below that of their sector peers? What should happen if the proposed levels of free allocation exceed the cap? This event risks allocation reduction to all installations, both efficient and less efficient installations alike. Well, the good news is that free allocation based on benchmarking is one good option. It allows for a more carbon efficient allocation between installations in the same sector. And this is particularly helpful where free allocation is limited and thus risks being rationed. Chapter 5 itself discusses how to navigate some of these issues of benchmarking. It talks about the design issues used to resolve or needed to resolve, including sector definition. It also refers to defining the benchmark itself and the problems associated with data availability. It also covers the updating and review of benchmarks. The chapter also considers issues relating to indirect emissions, typically for electricity, and issues relating to alternative approaches. And this is important because where you've got a sector size that's too small, or where the homogeneity of a sector is too problematic, different approaches to benchmarking are required. Benchmarking is also placed in the context of the current ETS schemes. In the European ETS, benchmarks were based on tonnes of CO2 per unit of production and set at the level of the average of the top 10% of a sector or subsector. In California, output-based benchmarks are used and set to recognise early action and energy efficiency by installations in covered sectors. And in the Chinese national scheme, industry sector benchmarks are also being considered. So I hope you find Chapter 5 and indeed all the other chapters in the handbook useful, and thank you for watching.